The future is already here, but it's not evenly distributed. Some hoteliers are like they were doing in 2008, and some hotels are killing it, and it's not really magic what they're doing. Gen AI is what's become super popular. But behind the scenes, I think actually it is more interesting the work that a company can do today with behind the scenes stuff than actually the front end stuff. The back of the house is where the action is now. Technology is full of buzzwords and blah, 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 up in the sky. What can you do tomorrow? And there's so much of it that you can start doing immediately to improve your revenue.
That's Juanjo Rodriguez, the founder of the Hotels Network, which has helped more than 20,000 hotels around the world increase direct bookings and boost their profitability. If that's what you want to do for your hotels, then keep listening. You're in the right place. In this video, Juanjo talks all about what he's learned, what he's observed, what's happening in the market, and the practical steps that he takes to help hotels boost direct bookings and increase profits. Let's get into it.
Take a company like Booking.com, for example, Expedia. Expedia, the only thing they do is online marketing. That's it. But once they sell a room, they don't have to do anything else. And for a hotel, that's where the job starts. Someone books and you have the full thing of actually welcoming that person in your property with the huge complexity that involves. So it's not an equal level playing field. It's way harder to run a hotel brand than to run an online OTA, right? An OTA. And I think that's the reason. And plus, it's very fragmented. The hotel side there's thousands of brands. There are a bunch of OTAs. So that relationship is very uneven. And therefore, we saw that the C people, so the consumers, the guests, don't really need one more tool. But the hoteliers have a need for almost everything. A better version of everything they're doing, and a bunch of things that have become really useful and popular in e-commerce, but they didn't make it to hospitality yet. That was a lot of the original inspiration. How come online e-commerce, Amazon.com, all of the good players that are pure players are so well developed in how to treat customers, and hospitality is basically one size fits all, and there's no innovation. That's it. No, 10 years to do the same thing. No, and we came.
It's remarkable given how big the industry is. Right, there's so much money here. There's such a big industry, and for me, this is what excites me so much about hospitality is the complexity that you are speaking about. Right, the operational complexity, the marketing complexity. Because I think for our listeners and viewers, this creates an opportunity. If you are kind of running your business in a smart sort of way, you can grab more market share from others who are not, right?
Totally. And plus, by the way, I fell in love with the industry. It's so interesting. Apart from the technology, all of it. No? And we discussed that internally a lot. The fact that you are offering basically a service that makes people happy when they travel, not that many people can work in something like this.
Well, so you're running a marketing agency, you're surveying companies outside hospitality, you see this opportunity, you decide to focus on hospitality. I'm based here in San Francisco. My understanding is San Francisco was a part of your launch story for the Hotels Network.
Correct. When we founded the company, I was living in San Francisco. Our first investor is from San Francisco. And I am a Spaniard. I came back to my hometown, my home place of Barcelona, where I'm living now, right before the pandemic, but I was in San Francisco for a few years. But by the way, I loved it there. I came for business reasons because to get together with the rest of the team, I was mostly in Europe, which is interesting because now we are basically a remote company with people in 15 different countries and 40 nationalities. But before the pandemic, it was not obvious that you could run a global company while not living with the rest of the team.
You were doing it first. Well, I'm curious before we get into some of the ways that you're helping hotels. Were you noticing these challenges not only in Europe but in the U.S.? Are these global problems that you were seeing in the hospitality industry? When you moved to San Francisco and you're talking to hotels out here.
So actually, that's a great question because if there's one thing that I really believe is that the problems of hotels are exactly the same everywhere in the world. That's why you can build one single technology product, and then serve clients in every country. And it's one of the reasons why you can build a very interesting technology company in the space. Because it's true that some parts of it are very local, but that's how you use the tools. The tools themselves are the same ones. It's also why hospitality has its own problems that are not the e-commerce problems. No? Let me give you an example. Typically, when we talk about personalization, that we'll probably go into that in a bit, personalization for a e-commerce player means that I have 10,000 products and I only have a space for 10 in the homepage. So it's basically a discovery problem, how I put the variety of my offering in front of you, just a tiny part. But hoteliers, if you are in a hotel website, they only have 3 types of rooms. There's nothing to, so it's super obvious. So what is personalization there? It's actually an offering problem. It's how I package everything I have to convey that this is the ideal place for you. So it's a completely different problem. And that's why the solution is different. And that's why there are players like us specialized in hospitality. And we don't compete with the generic e-commerce players helping, I don't know, flower or shoes websites.
That makes sense. Now, we talked a little bit about the problem, the opportunity that you saw. I actually want to fast forward in the conversation to talk about the hotels network today. Give our listeners a little bit of a sense of the scope of your company, the products that you offer, and then we're going to get into the details of those. But at a high level, tell us a little bit about the company today.
Perfect. So basically, our promise is that we want to help hoteliers and hotel brands grow their direct business. Our specialty and 100% of our focus is on direct, whenever you are selling directly to the guest. And that means mostly the website and your booking engine, but everything where you are communicating direct. The goal is never to replace OTAs because that would be very naive. The goal is to have a very a channel mix that is profitable in all of the areas, and you must maximize that growth. And when we say growth, it's because we don't develop a better version of the current stack that you have already. We don't do a better PMS or a better booking engine or a channel manager. We want to be a layer on top of your existing software that connects with the end guest. So our specialty, there's one, is understanding user behavior, guest behavior, and then being able to influence that behavior on your behalf across the full cycle. When they are searching for the hotel, when they are booking the hotel, and when they are at the stay, when they leave. Always on top of everything else. And that's why we call that direct growth, because really there's no name for this category. We are making it up as we go. And that's basically on the product offering. And then to give you a couple of pieces of data on size, we are working now with about 20,000 properties worldwide. We have a team of about 150 people spread all over, as I said, 40 different nationalities. And we are growing pretty strongly because we are performing well as a company, but also because the industry is in a very sweet moment, I think.
Amazing. Can you just run through your suite of products just to give people a sense of these different components? I have a couple of follow-up questions on that, but I want people to understand the scope of how you're helping hotels today.
Sure. So our core elements are data and personalization. So we have a few data products, including benchmarking, which basically allow hotels to compare their performance with the performance of the rest of the marketplace. And then personalization, which is the ability for you as a hotel brand to change the booking experience in real time. So your website changes dynamically to adapt to whoever is looking at it and try to convince him or her that this is the place, you arrive at the right hotel, and that you have to buy that room here in this channel. No, I don't need another one. And we always think about this as a two-step process. You learn through benchmarking, and then you apply your learnings through personalization. That's why the data piece is so important. And that's why we wanted this, in the name, the hotels network is the core idea that we started with. That because we connect hotels with each other, we are going to be able to build products that are unique and that will deliver unique value because of this sharing that happens through us. So those are the main offerings. And then building on that structure, we've built a number of offerings that either increase further personalization, and we apply a lot of machine learning techniques to predict behavior. We call that predictive personalization. We are building elements that improve the quality of the value of the reservation. For example, we build an insurance product that you can offer to increase sales and increase conversion rates. And then the latest thing we did is we use a lot of AI, not only the, let's say, ChatGPT style, also that, but we had a data science team for 7 years now, working only on algorithms that power whatever you as a hotel brand wants to do without you having to think about it. And this try to make things simpler, I think is a theme that goes through everything we're trying to do.
I want to start out at a sort of high level as we kind of think about driving direct growth and ask you, why does direct matter today? You know, I think when I was getting started in the industry 15 years ago or so, a lot of it was a cheaper acquisition cost. Is that still true today, or are there other opportunities that you see what makes this strategically important to focus on?
the business of running a hotel profitably is not that complicated because the metrics are always the same. How many people come to and stay with you at which price? Eventually, that's the whole thing. I think direct is probably the number one priority for every hotelier, and it will be forever because there's, from a commercial point of view, I mean, because obviously you prefer a direct guest versus a third-party one. And the change between 10 years ago and now is that was already true, but most hoteliers didn't have the tools or the expertise yet in order to be able to respond to that need. And that has been building over time. I think we can safely say that the expertise of the hoteliers running their own direct channel is way better now than it used to be 10 years ago. And that's why you see direct as a share of sales online growing plus 10% every year, even more than the OTAs. There's another element too, that we are kind of staying on top of a trend that means that online business grows and offline decreases. So it's not because necessarily you steal from the OTAs, it's you are taking share from other channels and in a much more profitable way. And there's another element that is for us is paramount, which is understanding user behavior, why people do what they do, what they want, and hopefully you can give it to them before they tell you, because then you will have a full experience. I think when we talk about personalization, which is like one of our major keywords, personalization is exactly what hoteliers are doing when you go and stay with them. That's the whole idea, that this stay is going to be unique because this is specifically for you. What we are doing is starting that line of thinking before they book.
That makes a ton of sense. And I like it because it moves this conversation from just calling it personalization, which feels like a buzzword, to this is the core of hospitality, is understanding people, making sure that they're providing an experience that is reflective of what you know about the person. And I think for me, this is kind of what is so fascinating about the area that you're working in is, yes, it is probably cheaper. You're not paying these commissions to third parties when you're booking direct, but it's that ability to really understand people, right? Their behavior. Maybe there's extra data that you are able to gather by driving these direct bookings. It feels strategically important and not just a cost savings or exercise.
100%.
Interesting. Yeah. I guess so. And then kind of one of the other things that was interesting to me from what you mentioned is you talked about building your technology as a layer, and kind of tell me a little bit more about the thinking behind that versus replacing other incumbent technology. Why build it as a layer?
The reason to build it as a layer is because you want to cover every touch point, and no piece of software that a hotel would use today interacts in all of the relevant touch points with the guest. For example, the PMS, which you would argue is like the system of record, has no connection with revenue whatsoever. And the booking engine is more of a thing that you need to have. A channel manager is making your life easier, but none of them are connected to actually producing more revenue for you. We typically split all of the technologies into the operational ones, things that you need to run the property, all of those I mentioned, and then the revenue generating ones, where it's with the focus of building a larger business, and you can include revenue management, CRM, direct growth in that category. So we wanted to build a layer on top of all of your operational software, so that, by the way, let me do a small aside here. One of the feedback we get from clients all the time is, I have too many tools, they don't talk to each other. That is 100% true. They are 100% correct. It's a long story on why we are there, but it's clear that if you build something that connects those pieces, there's a lot of value to unlock. One of the themes in our business with talking to clients is when you, and this is super simplistic, but in my opinion true, if you move from not doing something to doing something, it always works.
It sounds simple, but it's so true, right? I think people get hung up on thinking about the perfect solution. And what if you just took a step forward?
Correct. Look, we have a number of internal models to how we behave, and one of them is now better than perfect. And I think this applies completely to this situation. Of course, I want the perfect solution for my problem, for my website, for my CRM, whatever. And that solution is not there. But it's way better to start with the current solution than to work for a elusive point of time in the future when that becomes true.
I wonder if we could walk through your suite of product offerings. This conversation isn't just going to be a commercial.
Yeah.
You and I talked before this about we wanted to educate people on the potential, but you have solutions across each dimension of how hotels can think about direct growth. And so I think if we kind of walk through your product suite, it will sort of help people understand the full spectrum of activities that are required. And maybe starting out with just understanding direct channel performance, right? Why is starting there important?
Because you want to make the right decision, and the way to know how to spend your time and resources wisely is to have data to prove that you're on the right path. There's in every industry, and I don't think hospitality is the worst at all, there's a lot of guesswork. I'm just guessing based on my experience, and frankly, I have maybe, 20 years of experience, but compared to millions of years of experience, that's nothing. So we wanted to give a really easy tool to hoteliers to understand how good they are in their direct channel. And we built this product we call Bench Direct from benchmarking, which is basically tracking your core metrics: conversion rate, revenue rate, demand, user profile, rates, disparities, user behavior. And we allow you to see what your metric is, what your brand is, and how the wider world looks like. First, your, let's say, direct environment that we call internally proximity, so hotels like you around you, but also the wider world, hotels that are very similar to you, even though they can be anywhere. And for example, you can compare conversion rate. Let's say you are 3%, but is 3% good or bad? Well, there you can see it's actually pretty good because the average is 2.2. But maybe on length of stay, everyone has 4 and you have 3. Then there's clearly an opportunity. And for me, the end result of this analysis, of this benchmarking, is to find opportunities to grow. Yes, if I have limited time to think about this, these are exact places where I should apply the thinking, which could be, like I said, length of stay and conversion rate on mobile, whatever.
I can't tell you how many projects I've worked on to improve conversion rates where people have no idea of what good looks like, right? And they are very frustrated because they want to do a good job with the project, but they don't know what is a benchmark, and maybe they'll Google, what are industry benchmarks. But to your point, it varies so widely on so many factors. And what I'm hearing from you is you're giving people an ability not just to track their own performance, but to look at similar regions, properties, to get a real sense of, not only how are we doing, but how are we doing relative to the market. And that gives an ability to plan and track progress.
And to cut through the noise, in hotels so the number of people who book through hotels is not that large as an amount of different people compared to Amazon clients or Booking.com clients. Meaning that if you only look at yourself, a lot of what you see is just noise, it's randomness. Through our product, you can tell what is not random because it stays over time. For example,
tell me a little bit about some of that noise. Kind of what are factors?
Let me give an example. We do a lot of work on improving conversion rates, as you did. Turns out that if you look at a given hotel, a hotel conversion rate varies plus less 10% from one month to another by doing nothing, just naturally. And 10% is way above what you would aim in a good project to. So your project is basically drowned in this noise, and you can never tell if it's working or not.
This is a problem because I think what happens is for people that want to look good in a meeting or to their boss, they might selectively mention that month where you're up 10%. You're like, because of all of our work, we're up 10%. And well, what they didn't tell you is last month they were down.
Correct. That's 100% correct. Yeah. Larger brands is different because you have a larger brand with multiple locations, they average out. But we have all of the data on that, and I can tell you that even for multi-location chains, there's a lot of just randomness in that metric and many other metrics.
That's fascinating. Okay, so Bench Direct helps with benchmarking your own progress and then progress to the market. I want to talk about personalization because you mentioned this earlier. I think it's at the core, right? You mentioned about making it easy to book. At the core of personalization is, as you mentioned before, it's understanding people and then making a better experience based on that. And personalization has been a core focus of you at the Hotels Network, I think, from the beginning. And I wonder if you could share a little bit about how you are helping hotels with this.
Yeah. So you mentioned before something which 100% agree with, that is kind of a buzzword, personalization, because it's very safe to say that you're going to do more of it. typically less of it is never good. No? We are making personalization practical, meaning there's stuff that you can do tomorrow morning with personalization. It's not this grand idea that you are going to adapt somehow in a mythical way to a mythical guest. It's actually super specific stuff that you can start immediately using. And basically the idea is we pick up, we call it behavioral personalization, in the sense that we don't need to know who you are. When someone comes to a hotel website powered by THN, we don't need to know the name or the email or any personal data. But the behavior of this user, where you're clicking, where you're seeing the prices and rooms that you're visiting, and the story over time, all of that become triggers to personalize the experience. For example, you can do something as specific as saying, hey, I'm going to, your hotel is in New York. So I know that there's a long weekend in Canada. So I'm going to create a campaign that is going to show up only on Thursday, where I'm going to target Canadian families looking for last minute stay. And if they come with kids, I'm going to offer them a 7% discount and an upgrade to the suite. And you can create as many of you want as those campaigns. You can have 25 of those. But then every guest is going to see just one of them. And therefore, the probability, the chance that they actually become interested in that one is way higher than if you just run a 10% discount campaign for everyone.
This is exciting.
That whatever is in front of you is specifically for you. And it can be pictures or messages or offers. It can relate to anything that you have.
I'm just thinking about this, and it's exciting to me because I think this is where strategy comes in, right? Because our listeners likely know the segments, the times that are important to them, either because there's more demand from those segments or for those offers, or, if they're more sophisticated, they're looking at the profitability of different segments or different package offerings, right? So they know what matters. And what I'm hearing from you is an ability to take that insight and put it into practice by making it more likely for those profitable, high value guests to book these packages that are going to make more money for the hotel.
100%. Actually, we provide the technology, but we don't know the strategy. We actually need really smart hoteliers that they know what they want to do, and we are the enabler. One thing that happens is that we enable things that were in your mind that you wanted to do, but also that we create new possibilities. Because you can do that, then you start thinking about how to use that. For example, if before we came up, it was impossible for you to target people based on the number of visits they had or a combination of price and disparities on OTA, then you never thought about a strategy to solve that problem, because why would you? And that happens a lot. We do a lot of evangelizing on the possibilities of saying, hey, we are putting tools on the table, and then you guys have to find out how to use them. And there's a bit of experimentation at the beginning, but then our client base is so wide that after a relatively short time, we already have a bunch of best practices. And then a lot of our work is to come back to our clients with the best practices of everyone else, because we are a hotels network.
Earlier, you mentioned something that got my attention around, kind of the use of AI. And some people think about AI as limited to like a ChatGPT offering. And what I'm hearing from you is the opportunity is much bigger than that. And there is, again, you've kind of built your company with personalization as the core focus, but predictive personalization actually, takes that a step further, right? And my understanding is you're incorporating AI into the process. I wonder if you could share a little bit about what that looks like and how that's helping people with these challenges that you're describing.
ChatGPT/Gen AI is what's become super popular. But behind the scenes, I think actually it is more interesting the work that a company can do today with behind the scenes stuff than actually the front end stuff. So the back of the house is where the action is now. Because when you have a lot of data, like we have on user behavior, then now we have the tools that pretty efficiently and process the user behavior on your behalf, so that you don't have to understand what happens, but you can take action on the predictions of the algorithms. So we call it predictive personalization, because the idea is someone comes to the website, and while they are still there, our system can predict what they want and they want to do next. For example, what is their intent? How likely are they to book a room in this session? What is the spend capacity? Are they looking for the cheapest option or the suite? How flexible they are. Do they want these dates? But what if I suggest another set of dates which are better for me? And the whole idea behind it is that the algorithms through machine learning and AI predict behavior, and then you personalize the experience for that particular behavior. And that's, again, where the strategy comes in. Now you could filter maybe by, I don't know, by dates, or you could filter your personalization by country, so Canadians versus Americans. But here, you're selling intent. And intent is a concept. And you can apply that concept in many novel ways. And what we are seeing is that typically if you have a baseline of activity and you grew your website revenue by 17%, if you are a layer of prediction, you can get an extra 10%.
Wow.
Just by applying on top of your experience before.
Is there a type of hotel or hotel company that, in your experience, especially reaps the benefits of this, or is it across the board?
So it's across the board, because typically the increase you get is percentual. So the larger you are, the more in absolute terms you're getting, but in percentage, it applies to almost everyone. Having said that, there's a bit of a positive bias towards hotels with a wider offering, meaning a resort has many more things to play with than a business hotel downtown in a major capital city, right? So, and therefore, resorts are, so the average booking, the average ticket for a resort can be much higher if you add extra elements to just the room, while that's typically a bit harder on city hotels. So there's a bit of a difference there, but we see that you can apply very similar thinking in both lines.
I love it. Well, I appreciate you getting into that. And I mean, for people watching and listening to this, what I'm hearing from you is kind of the real potential of AI being behind the scenes isn't just, you saying this because you're selling AI powered technology. I'm talking to commercial leaders around the world, and I'm hearing this as well. There's interesting applications of Gen AI, but behind the scenes, there's so much power and potential. And so I think that's where the really interesting use cases come. I wonder if we could actually talk about another one, because you've introduced also an AI driven guest service agent. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about kind of why you launched this and what this does.
This one does use the Gen AI, so this is more of on the front end piece. So we launched what you can call an AI receptionist, basically a phone number that you can call, and then instead of a personal reception, then you get the AI answering you, and it can take reservations for you and can answer any question about the hotel. So it's basically a first level filter. And the great thing here is that reception is a pretty hard place to be, and in peak times it's super hard. And we have lots of people in the company who have been working at reception hotels. We know that firsthand. And this is basically taking the workload away from the person there and allowing them to focus on what's really important, which is servicing the guy in front of you in the check-in and check-out, in whatever service. So it's basically as simple as that. Why now? Because the technology became so good that now it's possible. 2 years ago, it was impossible to build a service like this with enough quality so that a proper hotel brand can actually put that in front of the customers. And now we were even amazed by the quality of the responses. That's why we launched now. We've been playing around with this for a while, and we decided, hey guys, this is ready. It's so good. And actually, there's kind of if you think of this AI receptionist, the agent, it has an unfair advantage versus a real person like you and me. Why? Because it never forgets anything. When you train that with the content of the hotel, it will never forget that we have a special room for weddings with a tab, whatever you tell him. Then the second one is always available, even in the middle of the night. And it's just as cheerful as starting the day. And then the other thing, and in some parts of the world that's very relevant, is that it's multi-language. It speaks a language. And it's true that in maybe New York is not that relevant, but if you are in Paris or you are in Taiwan, being able to speak Spanish or English or Taiwanese or Japanese is very relevant. And no one at reception can speak every language that any random guest is going to speak. So I think that all of those pieces together provide that this is, I think in the short term, people there's an argument to be made here that there's a cost element, it's cheaper, but actually I think it's going to be much higher quality. And that's for me, it's going to be a change that will happen pretty quickly. With this AI was in San Francisco, as you mentioned before. I was there over the summer. And as you know, they have the Waymo service, so the self-driven taxi service. And I didn't know it was there. I saw the first car. There's no one inside at the wheel. You think this is science fiction, cannot be true. And 10 days later, it's just landscape, one more of those, like they were always there.
Yeah, you get used to it quickly. It's amazing. It's amazing getting in one of those. And the technology is there. So if you think about, there's cars that can drive themselves. Certainly there is an opportunity for technology, to help 100%. Out in some of these areas. But I actually appreciate your focus on this is not just being cost savings, but looking for how is this better, right? Because I think, and especially in our conversation, we wanted to focus on driving direct growth. And so I think this comes back to everything that we've discussed so far, right? Because it is meeting people where they are, making it easier, providing more options. And I imagine from a commercial strategy perspective, this is really important because you're able to respond faster based on what the AI knows about your hotel and can, does it even get into presenting upsell offers or things like this that can make more money?
It's interesting that you mentioned, because when we've been discussing it with clients, upselling is something they always bring up, always. So one thing is, okay, this is stuff, but can it upsell? And that it's interesting for us. No, I love to have conversations with all of our clients because then they inspire our thinking. Obviously, no, if you meet 5 people and they always mention something, that something is very relevant. And clear upselling is one of those opportunities because you can target the upselling to the conversation. It's not that you upsell to everyone the suite in a standard way. It's that depending on what is happening in the conversation, and when you were telling me, I can tell you something. When we say personalization, the exact same thinking happens on a call on the phone. And automatically, because the machine can do that, because you train the system to do it. There's another element too that we'll see a bit more over time, which is not only that the proper service to the guest becomes really, really good, is that the hotel is going to have way more information about what is happening with the calls. Because now no one keeps track of who's calling reception, for what, or how happy they are after they hang up. And our system knows all of that. We can tell you 70% of the calls were about check-in times, or 15% of them were happy and 80% were very happy. And the calls, by the way, were 15% this language, 30% that language. All of that happens naturally once you process that through AI. We even send you a summary of the conversation by AI done with AI.
It's not just looking at the report, which I think is probably interesting, but then it's, okay, what can we do with that? And I think you might be able to preempt some of these questions. If you're noticing the same questions coming up 90% of the time, maybe you need to add a little information to your website so that someone doesn't even have to interact. Because I think this becomes super powerful when you're able to extract insights you didn't have and then put them to make life easier for your guests, the people that you're serving, in a way that other hotels are not. That's where you start building competitive advantage.
100%. And you have a lot of experience yourself on the review business. And a lot of that was the exact same thing. It's learning to improve. It's not for the sake of learning. It's, okay, and now what? And now I take action. That's why if I have something, it's a bias to action. It's all of the technology is full of buzzwords and blah, 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 up in the sky. You know what? What can you do tomorrow?
Yeah.
And there's so much of it that you can start doing immediately to improve your revenue.
You also have a couple other products. I wonder if, I understand you also have a unique offering that provides insurance. You mentioned earlier. I wonder if you could explain a little bit more about that and kind of why you introduced that offering and where that plays in the direct growth strategy.
We build an insurance product where you can include insurance. So basically travel assistance or medical assistance while you're traveling. Not cancellation, because cancellation is a whole... We also offer cancellation, but this is a different thing. The more original element is travel assistance insurance to include with the reservation. So not to sell it as an ancillary, but actually to include it with the room in order to get much higher conversion rate, because the offering becomes way better. That's the idea. And why us? Because part of our thinking as the hotels network is that our core job is to make you look better and shiny on your direct channel. Personalization is about, we don't change the hotel, we just make it look better. But because we have this size of 20,000 properties, the thinking is, can we build something and bring it to you to make the value relationship offering better? And insurance is one of those things. Maybe the first one of potentially a number of offerings where we build something and we can build it way better because of the network effect. Insurance is a numbers business. So if you have many more clients, then you spread the risk and therefore it becomes way better and more efficient for everyone involved. So basically we build that. we have to build it for ourselves because insurance is a super complicated industry. If someone is listening and has been there, super complicated, took us a pretty long time. But then we actually nailed something super simple that we can cover everyone in the world. And we've seen amazing results with this. The increase in conversion rate when a hotel starts offering this insurance is probably the single thing you can do now that moves more to your bottom line.
Interesting to see it drive those results. When you think about competing with like the booking.coms of the world, they have so many things that they're promoting. And I think for hoteliers listening, you got to think about what you can offer. This seems like a great option in that regard.
Exactly. Also, because it's not price, because anything you do price-wise, rate-related, Booking and Expedia will want you to match it for them. And this is something that is completely out of the rate battle, no? And therefore something you can play around with. Yeah.
You just rolled out Loyalty Lite, and I wonder if you could share with our listeners a little bit about kind of why you rolled this out.
Loyalty is an idea that we've been very interested in for a while, and it's a natural extension of personalization. We personalize based on your behavior the first time you can, but obviously the second time it should be based on your behavior and also your history. And now you have maybe some CRM, newsletter you send, some elements of delivering some content or value to your client base. But then that happens basically on the email. A CRM, when you look at it as of today, is basically a list of your clients and then sending emails to them. What we are doing is the ability to personalize based on your loyalty history on the website itself. Something that is obvious if you are one of the top brands, that you're a Hilton or Marriott, that happens naturally because you log in and you have everything there. But for 90% of the hotels in the world, you don't have a login option. So it's just as simple as that. We created a product where you log in, and when you are logged in, then everything can be personalized for you.
I love it.
That's also with the name, by the way, so that we say Loyalty Lite, because the key thing is you don't have to think about a long-term years project with gold, silver, bronze memberships. Forget about all that. It's something immediate that you can do tomorrow.
Well, I love that. You've come back to that a few times in our conversations, and I appreciate that because sometimes these projects seem overwhelming and it's a multi-year project and things don't go anywhere. I want to bring all this to life because I want people to kind of imagine what this can look like for their hotel or for their company. I wonder if you could share a story of a client that you've worked with and was able to roll out something pretty quickly, just to give people a sense of kind of how they did it, what that process was like and what some of the results were. Yeah.
So let me give an example. For example, there's a brand in Germany called Penta Hotels. They have several locations in a very, very successful brand. And we started working with them, and it's been now 5 years. And they have a good strategy in the sense that they've been evolving over time. So I think one core element of how you become successful on the direct channel is it's not a one-off. It's a long-term process. You don't go from 5% direct sales to 60% direct sales in one project. But it's pretty obvious that if you keep improving, you can get to 60% direct sales. And the work with Penta was something like this. We started with, let's say, the basic personalization elements. And then we included a number of elements to do predictive personalization over time. Then we introduced the elements for potentially for the insurance. And basically, it's like a ladder in a way, where you don't want to do everything at once. Maybe you start with 2 or 3 initiatives, and then you A/B test everything, which is another thing we really are deep into. Built into our personalization product is the ability to A/B test anything you're doing. So it's not only that with benchmarking you learn what the gap is. It's that when you have a solution to the gap, you can test if this is the right solution. And it's a never-ending process. You're always testing something. Because the strategy, you in your head, the strategy is whatever, and then we give you tools to prove if it is the right one. Look, Booking.com is well known for running hundreds and hundreds of A/B tests. And there's a reason why they do that and the way they are so successful. There's this sentence in coming from science fiction that the future is already here, but it's not evenly distributed. I'm sure you've heard this before. I don't think that's more the case than in the hotel industry. Because some hoteliers are still doing 5%, like they were doing in 2008. And some hotels are doing 60 and killing it absolutely. And it's not really magic what they're doing. It's just a will to do it and then putting the stuff to work. A bit more action, as I said, bias to action, and see what you can learn over time.
It seems like there are things that people can do tomorrow to get started on this journey to more direct growth. And but it's also a process over time. And so I would love for you to share with our listeners, what is something that they could do in the next 24, 48 hours to get started on this journey? And then kind of how would you suggest they think about this ladder to growth as you described it over years?
Once you have covered the basics and you have a good website and a good booking engine, then typically there's a number of things you can do in this with the personalization idea. It's okay, the website is nice, but this is nice for everyone. It's the same one. It can be a family, it can be businessman, it can be me, a foreigner, whatever. It's the exact same thing. So what are the basic elements of a strategy in personalization that you can do? And we have lots of benchmarks in this. Because as we said before, the problems of a hotel are typically the same ones everywhere in the world. And therefore, we already know exactly the first steps. The third and fourth step are probably particular to your property. It's what makes your hotel unique. But the steps 1 and 2, they are useful for everyone. And there's a list of things that we can bring to the table. That would be, I think, the first thing. It's pretty obvious that you have that pricing and rate setting is relevant. We are not a revenue management tool in the sense that we don't give you a suggestion on rates, but we can integrate with the revenue management tools pretty easily. Basically, to combine that power of having a rate, but then a personalized rate for you in particular. Again, the ideal price rate for May 1st, it may not be $200. It may be $200 for you, but $180 for me, and maybe the suite for someone else. And that idea of giving people different things is pretty easy to start with. That's typically what we suggest that a first step. And then quick wins now, as I said before, the insurance, so we call it Safe Direct. The insurance product is very easy to get started with and doesn't require any work from you ever, because everything runs automatically. That's also the power of technology. You can do a bunch of things with very little effort. If anything, what we are trying to do, because I perceive the need, obviously, also in myself, is to simplify things. Simplicity is the key word. And we've seen that. If you build something super powerful, but it's hard to use, people just don't care. So I think as most of us, as professionals and human beings, are ready to swap some power for some simplicity. We are trying to build both in the company. We want to offer you the last targeting option and personalization option you never ever thought about, but also to make, if you are not that type of person or you don't have the time, because that also happens. We have clients that are chains of 600 hotels and clients that are single properties. Obviously, they don't have the same resources to run with everything. And we want to be able to adapt to both. And that is a pretty hard job, by the way, because it would be easier to do something just for the simpler time-constrained ones. It's not because they don't want to do it. It's because it's very hard to find the time to do that. So a lot of our thinking in the products, and Safe Direct Insurance one is one of them, is if it can be hands-free, that once you set it up, you don't touch it ever, just then perfect.
You've built multiple companies. You are serving more than 20,000 of the world's best hotels around the globe. You have a really interesting perspective into kind of where technology is going. What excites you most as you look into the future?
So I think clearly AI is something you have to mention now, because we have never seen a potential revolution of this impact since the mobile phone and the iPhone. I think this is really a game changer. And we are now still playing around. I mean, the technologists, we're still in the playing around phase. What we will see will be way better and will change the dynamics of a lot of us. And a lot of that happens behind the scenes, but there will be also a bunch of things happening in front. If we don't talk about AI, that we already spent some time there, I think this idea for hoteliers to think more holistically and to have the tools to do that. So that, for example, that marketing and revenue are not opposite parties, but actually they are aligned. And in order to be aligned, they need some tools to help them align and have a more higher vision of the whole value you get from a customer over time. It's not just getting the room. You said it before. You get the room, then you have the additional services, that person comes back. And there's the lifetime value idea that is so obvious in e-commerce, basically doesn't apply whatsoever in hospitality. And I think that's a very interesting idea. And some people like us will build some of those tools that you need to do it, but also it's an evolution if you're thinking. As I said before, I think hotels are already mastered some of the techniques. So that's done. You don't need to do anything else. And therefore, you can devote your attention to something different.
Well, thank you for sharing that. I'm going to include a link to your website in the show notes. Is there any specific resource or part of your website you would recommend people check out when they're going there and learning more about your company?
We have a lot of resources. So if you check the resources, it's easy to find on the top links. Because one of the things that we want to do is to get the word across of trying something out. I think there's very little. Actually, we have one of the sayings I always repeat internally with our team is, there's no risk here. Because the risk is what? No. So some people are in businesses of risk. If you are a doctor, then you have to be careful. But we are in the selling a great experience business. It can never go wrong. And therefore, you should try many more things than what you are doing now, without the expectation that they are all going to work. But there should be we should be a bit more daring, if you want, in just trying out stuff.
I love it. It's time to be bold. That's how you innovate. That's how you make change happen. And that's how you get results. So thank you so much for joining us and taking the time to share your insights and perspective. I learned a lot and enjoyed it. So thank you.
Yeah. Thanks a lot. Thanks for having us.